I'm Oliver Fuseli. I'm the managing director at Great Guns USA, and this is Addison Capper.
I'm the North American editor of LBB, and just wanted to say thank you all for joining us, basically.
I love it. So I'm going to introduce you guys one by one. My first guest is, one of these scary things, it's Anastasia Magion Calda. Yes.
Magion Calda.
Megan Calda. She's the director, head of production at LinkedIn Creative Studios. Welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I try to find out a little bit about, you guys that maybe people don't know. And if this is something that everybody knows, tell me something they don't know. But I found out that you were a part of the original BMW film.
I was at Radium. Do you remember back in the old days?
I remember Radium.
We actually worked together when I was at Radium.
Yes, we did. We did.
It was many years ago. And I was working with Fallon on all the post-production visual effects for the BMW films. And so it's quite an endeavor. We were working with anonymous content, and I spent a lot of time down in LA where we were all trying to figure out how people were going to be able to watch this, because everybody was still on dial-up back then. Yeah. And so it turned out that you could go to the website and click a box and put in your address and have a DVD shipped to you. I mean, that's how we ended up doing it, because unless you were on like a super, fast speed internet at somebody's big corporate office, you weren't really able to watch the films. So it was kind of a massive learning curve for people at the time, but it was really fun.
I know. I love that. I know David Fincher was an executive producer on that whole thing. So that was an amazing thing. I don't know if I was a part of it. Maybe this is just in my head and I'm claiming glory and I shouldn't be. But the Virgin Airlines project, which is a really big project. I remember when I was at Tool, I did one of those. Was that the one that you did? Were you? Or tell me about that one. Because I know it won a lot. Yours won a lot of awards.
Yeah, so we did work on a Virgin project with you all at Tool back then.
It was just not the award-winning one.
It wasn't the award-winning one. Because the two projects we did there, the one was the Blah Airlines, which was that 6-hour film with mannequins to sort of mimic the flight across the country. People thought we were nuts when we were doing it, but it became sort of one of those viral things where then people on YouTube started filming themselves watching the 6-hour film and then posting themselves for 6 hours watching and commenting. And it just became this very, very viral thing. And then it ended up in the Dallas Film Festival. And if you sat through the entire film, you got a free Virgin flight, which was, quite a fun little stunt to do. But that was really fun to work on, because I can't even tell you what the budget was. I feel like we had like $15,000. And
oh my God.
It was just one of those things that we just pushed, fleshed out and did this crazy, mannequin filled crazy 6-hour flight. And then we did the other Departure Date, the film that we shot in flights around the world. We shot them. It was all shot 100% in flight on fully booked real airplanes. So that was a fun one, although wildly exhausting, but really fun.
Yeah, I think there are comics that still do those sound effects of the dial-up. That remember everybody knows that sound. But thank you very much and welcome. Our next guest is Tasha Dean, who's head of production at the Martin Agency in Richmond, Virginia. Welcome.
Thank you.
Somebody said, how has the web changed in the last 10 years? And how do you see it changing in the next 10 years? You said, I feel like the web was a place we went to, but now it's just inherently part of our daily lives. I think this was back in 2015, maybe. And you said, I really like the emergence of empathy tech. And I thought, isn't that just such a great thing for you to say and to look back on I don't know, 7 years later?
I was a digital person growing up. I was digital native and really I came from the experiential and tech side of things. So it's really exciting for me to have more exposure actually to the film side and marrying those two things together. I do find that an over reliance on tech can lead to separation. So I think when we're looking at, creating experiences, we're really looking at creating experiences that are going to entertain, surprise, delight, and bring people together. And I think those are the most fun things for me to work on, is when tech is used in that way.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You also said that, winning a film line and not knowing what cans or lines were at the time was like a great thing. I thought that was such a funny line. I love that. Please.
I was a taxi at the time, and I'd come over from the client side, and someone's like, "We want a film lion," and I'm like, "Oh my God, this sounds amazing!" And I started Googling lions, and I'm like, I see lions, but I don't understand what this means. Like, I had no context of advertising awards, and that was my first foray.
I love it. Well, you also had somebody ask you about your best advice, and you said, be nice. Even when the going gets tough, no one will look back and remember all the great times you all experienced throughout the job every time, but they will remember that one bad time. So be nice. And I think that that's a really great advice.
Thank you.
You probably still live by that. Well, thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. John Drawbaugh, head of production at Argonaut, San Francisco. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
You, my friend, you've done a lot of things and you have a lot of stuff about you, but you played the trombone in the concert in the marching band.
Wow, you did your research. Oh.
That's so funny.
Well, even more so, I really didn't know what this meant, but it said butchery at Avendano's. You were a butcher at Avendano's meat place?
No, I can't say I was a butcher. I simply took a butchery class.
I love that class. I've taken that class as well.
Right? Have you really?
In Bernal Heights, right?
That's right. Yeah.
My friends own
woman-owned butchery.
Yeah. They're old friends of mine, those women. They're pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, it was a present for my friend and I, who are, no offense to any vegans, meat lovers. And but it was also partly like, I'm like one generation removed from farmers, and here we are, like, so unaware of where our food come from. And even, going down to production dinners, you eat these fancy dinners and you get these beautiful cuts of steak or whatever. And I realized, like, I don't really know what I'm eating or the craftsmanship that goes into that. We talk about, obviously, being more environmentally friendly and things like that. And yeah, it was just something to look into and to experience and use another piece of my brain, and like I said, a big call out to the craftsmanship that goes into that small part of our food chain, and the artistry around it was pretty cool.
I love that. Is anybody vegan on the call? No.
I actually try to be at home, but for the exact reason that you just said, like, well, not at home, but like most of the time. And if I do eat meat, I try and find out like where it has come from. And so, yeah, for the exact, like, I'm a meat lover as well, but I guess in a similar way to you.
I love it. One last thing about John is that it only because I'm honoring Broadway opening today. New York is one of those cities that just has been hit and hit and hit and hit, but the South as well now with another hurricane. But so John, you actually in college directed theater, I think.
In college, after college, as part of my New York life.
I see the playbills. I gotta get it now. Okay.
Yeah, I went to a conservatory school in Point Park University now in Pittsburgh, and then lived in New York for a long time. And actually, like, advertising was my day job. Eventually, I was directing plays, acting, stuff like that, and eventually started my own theater company with some partners, part of like the off Broadway theater scene, I guess. But yeah, that was so just interesting that I found my way into advertising. It was kind of using all those same skills in sort of a different way. So it was
wow, I love it. Well, I could tell by Tasha's reaction that she loves the theater. So are you glad? Are you going to go to the theater? Are you going to support the theater, or do you?
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is I miss New York. I moved from 3 years ago, and it's just like, oh.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, thank you guys. Welcome again. I am so glad to have you guys. I'm honored. I know time is very valuable. So let's get started. I'm just going to start with the first question. It's about words. The power of words is more important than ever. I'm going to ask you each, what is the most inspiring and what is the most annoying word or words that have stood out in the past year or so? I think I'm going to start with Anastasia.
I hear that question. Unfortunately, I think of many, many annoying words before I think of the inspiring ones. So I'm going to start with annoying, which it's funny because I just work with, we have so many different teams and we're so, everything's evolving constantly in terms of the world of social and being at the forefront of what's happening out there. So one term that teams that I work with use all the time that drives me crazy. Sorry, everyone who's hearing this, but is thumb stopping.
Oh my God. Wow.
It's got to be thumb stopping. It's like I hear it 40 times a day. And it just becomes sort of, to me, it feels like a Saturday Night Live skit needs to be made about thumb stopping material or something. So that is one of the terms that just really gets to me, alongside, I think the other one that's frustrating, just because we've been hearing it so much, is just, and both of my words are hyphenated words here now, thumb stopping and new normal. So I think people got a little bit away from saying new normal after they were saying it for 9 months straight. So, and there's no such thing. So those are the two that I would say I could live without. And I would say one of my inspiring words, I didn't make it up, but I feel like I kind of made it up, but it's rejigger. I say rejigger all the time.
Love rejigger.
Rejigger is just in my mind. I feel like that's just sort of my motto of the past 2 years, is just rejigger. I'm going to rejigger this, rejigger that. Let's rejigger. I just feel like I'm constantly sort of pivoting and just rolling with every punch we keep getting. So I find that word to be really inspiring, because there's no real brick walls or dead ends at this point, because we've all had to just figure out how to sort of rejigger everything.
I think it's also nice to have an alternative to pivot, right? I prefer rejigger. It's much more fun, I think.
Yeah. Rejigger is definitely one of my.
Those are great. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest with you, because I have to be. I think I may have heard thumb sucker. I don't think I've ever heard thumb stopper.
But it's hard to say. If you say it a lot, thumb stopping, thumb stopper.
Thumb stopper. Those are really, really great words. So thank you for sharing with us. So what about you, John?
I'll follow Anastasia's lead. I'll start with the negative and I'll end with the inspiring. My annoying word is best practices.
Oh, yes.
Because I mean, I know I'm being hyperbolic here, but I mean, I know best practices are to wash my hands with warm soapy water, not mud. I know best practices are putting my socks on before my shoes. So I just think it's so overused. In your question, it really, words do matter, right? Because if you start to look at these things as must do's, you can't stray from this. I worry that starts to hamper creativity. Obviously we know there are specs, you will need so many pixels at the top of a snap or whatever it is. I get all that, but I just worry that, if it does, it become a cop out? Does it become, just a lazy way to make work? Or worst case, if you do follow these best practices all the time, does all the work start to look the same? So I think it's just I'm being kind of, again, hyperbolic about, obviously I know there are certain specs you need to follow and certain things you need to do, especially in the digital and social space. But I just worry that we start to get complacent when we think about those things, and knowing that, it could hamper innovation and even deter a creative way of looking at something. And for sure, I'd love to hear from Tasha about Unskippable, one of the most famous, probably best practice breaking content. What kind of angina did that cause? We can't do that. Well, we did, and look what happened. Millions of people actually interact with it. So that's why best practices, I like to throw rocks at that a little bit. Most inspiring for me is sort of an internal terminology at Argonaut. It's in adaptable craft. It's really one of the main pillars of our agency. And what that means to me is it really weaves the idea of craftsmanship and production throughout our process on how we look at the work, how we're briefed in the work, how we develop the work, and ultimately how we execute it. Because craftsmanship is really important here. And we also realize it's not necessarily about production value. And I mean that in a positive way, in a really freeing way. So we found when we look at all of our projects, it's always idea first. And we look at it from what are the tools in our toolbox? How can we make this happen? Is one of the tools our in-house production group Avalon? Is it partnering with a production company, but then an influencer? We've all been doing this for years now, but it's really embracing and setting ourselves free to not be saddled with like a traditional even approach to all of our work. And we might even look at a piece of creative and come at it from two wildly different directions, and bid on those, so to speak, and see what makes the most sense. So I just found it very freeing. It freed us up from this like, cheap, fast, and good pick two. It sort of throws that away. We sort of rise above that. And I think it just really allows us to like, use all the tools in our toolbox that we have as producers and creatives.
Do you use any of those words? Do you apply that to your own personal life, in your own personal world?
Not best practices, no.
No, definitely not.
Don't do that. Adaptable craft. I mean, I guess the philosophy of it. I think I walk around my house talking about adaptable craft, but for sure, I think it is freeing to like think about it. Like, just put the idea first. Like think about what's the sort of solution we're trying to create here, and let's be free of any trappings or expectations or predecessors or traditions. So that's what I like about it. And the word craft, again, we're talking semantics here, getting back to the craft of what we all do, or again, like you said, what you do in your own life too, like doing something craft-like and with some care.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thank you. That's really great. I love that. What about you, Tasha?
The not so favorite, I think one of the words is alignment. I hate that because it's so nondescript. It's like, let's get alignment on that. What are we aligning on? What are the details? So alignment to me is kind of like a throwaway. So that one's got to go.
Yeah, it's kind of like best practices, right? Alignment, best practice. Yeah. Okay. Really? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then I think two of my favorite, and I have to use it for everything, is shenanigans, because I feel like everyone is up to some shenanigans in the corner, and I gotta figure out what's going on. So
I love that. Everything old is new again. And so right now, like, you're seeing these spots where it starts out in the present day, and then they keep going back and back and back and back. And ultimately you look and it's the same thing 20 years ago that they're advertising today. So I love these words, are really great. And I hope they inspire, people, our viewers, to kind of think and rethink what they do every day. So thank you for those. The next question is going to be come from Addison.
I guess a slightly silly question it's a bit silly. What are you really bad at but enjoy?
I love this question. It's a great question.
I think silly questions are the best questions. That doesn't mean it's so we'll start with John.
The list is so long of things
Were you good at
I know for sure I would be a terrible surfer, even though I've always wanted to try it. But the one thing that I am attempting and certainly challenged at is gardening. I didn't have plants in my house for years because I had a cat who would eat them. So we had like fresh cut flowers and that was it, and I've lived in an urban setting for my entire adult life. So it's not like I ever had like a garden or, land to till. So funny enough, we moved back to San Francisco from the East Coast. The place we have now has a little backyard, and the previous owners actually had some flower beds I'm looking at right now. So one of them has big, beautiful, mature hydrangeas. And I mean, the flowers are giant on it. The other flower bed was literally a patch of dirt with some sticks sticking up that I assumed were old hydrangeas and some vines. So I Googled away, went down the street to the Sloat Garden Center, did some, impulse buying, and literally dug in. And so I worked at it for a couple of weekends. I actually took time off earlier in the year to like spend some time away from the office and to focus on that. And just, so I don't know, it's kind of interesting. It's thriving, but now I'm, still trying to keep it alive and, battling the awful drought conditions we have and the horrendous water bills that come along with it. But what's cool about it is it's like I was able to take something barren and bring something back to life again, and just trying something new. I mean, it's nice to use like creative ideation skills, when you're looking at it, what do I need to do next? I get to use my producer brain to be like, all right, what do I have to do next? What's the schedule throughout the season? How do I figure this out? Maybe making mistakes along the way.
I commend you anyway. This is when I moved into this apartment about a year ago. It's the first apartment I've had with a balcony. So I excitedly went to buy lots of plants and herbs, which are all extremely, extremely dead now. I didn't notice them for a few months, and then I genuinely don't know what happened. I don't have a producer's brain either, so I wasn't very methodical about how I planting everything. Anyway, Tasha, you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm really bad at painting. And I love to do it. And so my husband's always like, yeah, just give me the paintbrush. Cause I love to paint things. But I'm just so messy and I just go really fast and I'm just not detailed oriented. And it really hurts me because like we've, been in a bunch of different houses and I'm always like, I'm going to paint this and make it look so good and modern. And he's like, yeah, no, you're not. So I'm really terrible. And like, I want to do stuff with my hands, but like I'm a producer. I need to produce things behind the scenes. Way better at that.
I love it. Did you color as a child? And were you in the lines or you were outside?
I was in the lines. I don't understand what went wrong.
That's funny.
Is it like you said you love painting and you mentioned decorating? Is it mainly decorating, or do you get your like easel out sometimes and try and paint?
Oh no. I'm just way too high strung to actually like sit down for an hour and paint. Yeah.
Okay.
I love that.
Anastasia?
Definitely singing. And I've always said, if I could have had a different life, if I come back as someone else in my next life, I want to come back as a singer. And, that would be my dream to like, I used to watch Bewitched when I was a kid and I'd always want to be like, ding, 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 and then be on stage singing these amazing songs. It's been interesting too, because I am a definite teenager of the 80s. And so I know all of the 80s songs, like every lyric of every song. And what's ironic is my 16-year-old daughter has found herself intrigued by 80s music all of a sudden. So she has all these playlists where I know every song. And so I'm just singing along. And then she secretly films me to show me how terrible I am. And then she and my son like make these little videos and giggle away at how like what a terrible singer I am. And we just went to Bottle Rock, my daughter and I, last weekend. And she was like, yeah, no, mom, do not sing in public, like in front of other people. It's really embarrassing. And so yeah.
Well, you can't go you've got to give us just 2 bars of something. Oh, no. Come on. Come on. You can just what is the American anthem? Go ahead, sing something.
Oh, I could never even do that. The one that my daughter's really into right now is The Cure. So I could do like, boys don't cry. Boys don't cry. And she's like, oh God.
I love The Cure. I can't believe she's into The Cure. That's amazing.
So it's funny how, like you just said about advertising, everything that's old is new again. I mean, her playlist is like the Violent Femmes, Joy Division, The Cure. I'm like, yes, finally, so I could go to all the concerts with her and stuff. So we jammed out to the Foo Fighters last Sunday or Sunday night at Bottle Rock. It was amazing. So
unbelievable. Are you a karaoke? Like, do you go, like, are you one of those people that would do karaoke?
No, the only song I will do it and regret it. I always pick Paradise City because I know the one, but then you forget how long that song is, because I can be like, take me down to the Paradise City where the grass is green and the girls are, and then the song goes for like 2 hours and you're like,
right, exactly.
Like, and then you regret it. So yeah.
I too had a passion, but for painting. My parents, I think because I was so hyper when I was a kid, just wanted me to get out of the house on the weekends. So, and we lived on a lake, and they signed me up for painting classes. I probably had, I don't know, 10 years of painting, maybe 15 years of painting. I'm the worst painter, but I love it. The other thing that's really great about what's happening with what you guys are talking about is that, we've been in the pandemic, we've been at home. So really to stop and feed those passions and have the time to even do that when we didn't prior to the pandemic. So that you're taking the time to really enjoy your life and really kind of explore things that make you happy outside of work, I think is brilliant. And I hope people take that away. It's really important.
You've made Anastasia sing, and I want to see some of your paintings one day.
You will. when people see them, they're like, "Oh my God, it's abstract." I was like, no, that's supposed to be a real dog. I was like, I don't even know what abstract is, but I will show it to you.
Weren't you like a tap dancer too?
I did. Oh my God, I
I
did.
remember being at dinner. We went out to dinner at like the proper hotel or somewhere, and I
Yes.
remember you telling the story of your famed tap dance years. And
I came to I from New Orleans, and I wanted to be a dancer, from the time I was a kid. I never took any kind of dance lesson. I just danced, I just was like this nervous kid. And back in the day, there was a series called The Gong Show. And I drove from New Orleans, Louisiana with one tap class and went to audition for The Gong Show in Hollywood. And I made it onto they do the pre-screening. So I got onto the show, and then the only thing I knew how to do was like slap ball change. So I did slap ball change, mind you, in a full black unitard, black tap shoes. And all I did was slap ball change, but I couldn't do it without saying it. So I would go slap ball change in a circle. And it seemed like I was doing it for like an hour. And I thought like, oh my God, they love me. Like they love me. Well, it was really like 2 seconds later, I heard 3 gongs in unison. It was just like the end of my career.
That's a pretty good story to be that you were on the Gong Show. That's
a funny one. I forgot about that. That's crazy. Enough with all of that. Let's go on to the third one. So what is the one thing that your mother or your father taught you that you've taken with you to your adulthood and you use it today or not? Anastasia, let's go with you.
I would say, it's interesting because my parents strangely didn't instill too much in me. They were very hands off in the sense of like wanting to bring up like autonomous children, which I really appreciate now as a parent because I wish I could be more like that. But the one thing I remember is my father was really big on teaching you to stand up for yourself and your beliefs. Like he would do anything for you if somebody was judging who you were or your beliefs and I have this memory of being young, really young, and sleeping over at a friend's house, and the parents made me drink milk, and I didn't eat dairy, and I still don't eat dairy. And they wouldn't let me leave the table until I drank a whole glass of milk. And when I got home, I was so upset that my dad got in the car, took me over there, took me to their front door, put his finger in the woman's face and said, "Don't you ever make my daughter do something she doesn't want to do again." And I remember that feeling like somebody really had my back. But when we left, he said, "You have got to stand up for yourself. You should have sat at that table all night if they made you drink that milk." And I've really taken that with me, a sort of a combination of having people's backs, but also feeling like I got to stand up for myself and what I believe in. I mean, I know that was just milk, but it's sort of a metaphor for like bigger things. But I remember that so well, just like how that made me feel.
Oh my God. I mean, you just gave me chills. Like that's just that is so inspiring because it's so great that you still take that with you. That is a big, big inspiring story. Like that gets me. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, it was a great memory to have of my dad too.
And where is he still alive, if you don't mind me asking?
He is. He's in San Francisco. So
oh my God.
He still does that. He would still do that for me or for any of my kids or anything. He would stand up for us no matter what. I mean,
oh my God, I got to meet your dad.
He's a good guy.
What about you, Tasha?
We emigrated from the Middle East. So I was born in Abu Dhabi to Canada and then to the US. But for me, it was really about working hard because, my parents were always just like, you're not going to be given the same chances as other people. So you're going to have to work extra hard and put in all those hours in order to get ahead. So like that was the main thing. So I think that was an ethic, like just a thing that I've taken with me through all of life.
I've always wanted to go to Abu Dhabi. I've not really traveled a lot of the Middle East, and I would love to. I love Turkey. I don't know if that's considered, that's the EU, right? That's not the Middle East.
Yeah. Well, it's not like Sex and the City portrays Abu Dhabi, but
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
It's a little bit more different than that. Great movie, though.
I know, exactly. What about you, John?
My parents used to always tell me, treat others the way you yourself wish to be treated. And my dad was a sales guy on his own business and stuff. And he always say, you get more flies with honey than with vinegar. And so, I take that to heart that, I do treat people respectfully because we work in a really collaborative business. And I, again, coming from the theater and always kind of being in a creative, collaborative environment, like you have to be respectful of other people and earn their respect as well. And, I think things, and that's just sort of my tempo anyway, my personality to kind of help people move things along in a positive way. I think there's a lot of pressure in business too, like for producers, to be a little more no nonsense, or to be, a bit, sometimes you have to be the, your creators or your account people want you to be the asshole. And I just know like that's not my thing. Obviously, I have really high standards. I'm not a doormat. So if my standards aren't being met, I certainly address those. But I think it's just about being respectful of other people, treating others like you want to be treated. I don't want someone screaming at me or someone being disrespectful to me. So.
Let's go on to the fourth question. How do you feel traits like empathy and vulnerability play a role in your leadership? And presuming you're an empathetic leader, how do you stop that affecting your personal life?
That's a great question, and it's timely for me. We just went through we take leadership development at Argonaut really seriously. There's a sort of our core, agency leaders, and then those of us who run departments and groups. And we actually went through a leadership seminar with a coach in New York this summer, and we talked a lot about vulnerability and empathy, and really using those as tools. And like for me, I'm a very empathetic person. It kind of comes, if anything, I think I maybe over-index. So I've had to learn to be a little more clear-eyed necessarily, and maybe less emotionally involved, which is good as a leader, and then the vulnerability, which is like really opening yourself up to truths. That's how you get at truths, is to be vulnerable. So it's not just about, it's taking criticisms of yourself or your team or individuals or the work in a really positive way. And of course, that has to be served up in a productive manner as well. And vice versa, when you're the one having to give some kind of feedback, positive or negative, you do have to open yourself up to vulnerability and make sure that the recipient is also open as well. Like I said, I'm a very empathetic person, and just naturally. And I care a lot about the people I work with, the people on my team. But at the same time, you do need to separate yourself from, work and life. And that's hard to do, but you find your own coping mechanisms, I guess. Maybe it's my garden, but it's obviously a very, very important traits to have, and hopefully instill that with our staff as well, when not just working amongst each other, but with vendors, et cetera.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. What about you, Tasha?
I don't think I was as empathetic as I am now. I think I kind of grew into that, and I don't know if that's like a little bit of New York kind of shaping that in the past. But I think that, moving down here to the South and kind of looking at it more holistically and looking at some of the more deeper seated issues in the South has actually made me a more empathetic person. Because there's just a lot of like systemic stuff going on here, and it's nice to be able to have an agency that is honestly transparent and open and candid with one another, that we can talk about this kind of stuff. So I've learned to be a much more empathetic leader, and more emotionally actually invested, which is good for me, I think, and for the team. Because we can't do it alone.
Right? Nobody does it alone. I love that. I think that's really great. That's interesting. Do you guys have a mentorship program at the Martin Agency?
Yeah, there's actually quite a few levels. Yeah. So, the account levels do it, like the managing director level, we have our own IPG coaches. And then there is levels below that, and especially creative, because we found that creative, as they level up, they're actually not taught to be good managers, or how to give constructive feedback and things like that, and the whole thing just trickles down. So we've put coaching and mentoring at each of those levels when people level up, so that they can be taught some I'm not going to say best practices. Some,
Some
They can get
thumb-
aligned on best practices. right?
some
Someone isn't
thumb-stopping
working.
ideas. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's amazing. Thank you for that. What about you, Anastasia?
It's interesting just hearing what you were saying, Tasha, about New York. I grew up in my professional world in New York, right? So I did my first 10 years in the business in New York on the production side. And so there was zero empathy, especially back then. And the thing was, is you were kind of taught not to care about anyone and not to have any soft spots for anyone. It's like, no, you drive that cube truck at 4 a.m. through this area where you might get killed, like no empathy for you. So, I mean, it was interesting because coming up the way I did, I feel like I'm a very like intuitive and empathetic person, a little woo-woo, I always like to say, but it was hard for me in New York because I had to get really hard. A big learning curve for me was to learn how to swear a lot. And that was hard for me. And I realized looking back, like, I think I tried to like swear like at least 3 words in every sentence. That was my goal, right? And it's been funny 'cause I've been watching Ted Lasso and I'm like, oh, this reminds me of my past. Like when I said fuck every other word, it's awesome. But so I'm very glad that the world has evolved from that place, and I was able to actually, come back more into my true self and be more empathetic. And I think the biggest thing for me over the past 2 years in terms of vulnerability is just really, again, one of those statements we've overheard so much in the past year, but meeting people where they are. But it is as a manager, just realizing that people are not okay and really struggling on a daily basis. And we're all here in our little boxes smiling. And, there's just so much, to the right and left of the screens. Right. And so just understanding what I've made a huge effort of just being super transparent and real about my own struggles through this time. And I have a teenage daughter who's struggled immensely during this time. And I've had to take time off of work to take care of that, and making people realize like, it's okay to not be okay. Like I'm not okay all the time either. And so I think that's been a really important thing during this time, because I feel like people do feel like this 8 hours in front of a screen, 10 hours in front of a screen, like they have to be okay. And I think the hardest part where you say, how do you leave it at work and not bring it home? Again, what a learning curve these past 2 years. Like, how do you not bring it home? You're home. Everything's blending together. And so I found it very hard to leave things at work in the past year and a half or 2 years. So that's been a huge challenge for me.
Wow. Being vulnerable to you was exposing yourself to the people that surround you. I think that oftentimes, and it's one of the reasons why we're doing this series, because I just think that there's so many misconceptions or interpretations of who you guys are as leaders, making day-to-day decisions, big decisions about advertising, how we can approach you, or can we approach you, or can somebody within your own team approach you in a way that may make them feel a little bit vulnerable. But to be able to have that, and own it is really a big thing for, I think, all of us to learn, a big lesson for us all to learn, like show vulnerability. We're not all perfect. Well, I am most of the time, but no, hardly, as you know. But I do think it's really, really important. Great answers, guys. You guys are knocking it out of the park. You're unbelievable. We have one bonus question. I don't know how everybody's on time, but I'm gonna go for it. One of my favorite sayings, and I don't know who I heard this from, hire great people and get out of the way, or get out of their way. Do you guys have a saying that you use to inspire or encompass your thoughts and philosophies? John, what about you?
All right, I'm gonna send you guys a link. There you go.
Oh, I love it. This is the first.
One of my favorite sayings is
all right, that's it, let's roll.
hey, let's be careful out there.
I love it. I love it.
Big blues.
That's genius.
And I honestly, I started using that when I became a head of production, as sort of just a fun way to like, at the end of a department meeting, or, at a GIF of it at the end of an email, like about process or something. So kind of like a little like, hey, just be careful out there, everybody. Hey, follow these either new procedures or process I'm just talking about, or just, just thinking about like, how we approach the work and stuff. So, it was like, be buttoned up, look out for your team, look out for the client, it's rough out there, look out for each other. And ultimately what I always took away from that is like, be careful out there. It's a crazy, wild world, get each other's back, it's a team effort. And I talk a lot about collaboration, and we only get to great work by being great collaborators. And then weirdly, the last 18 months, be careful out there really took on like serious, like, oh man, now it's like serious. So yeah, now it's like, be safe, literally, let's keep people safe. Let's keep people well. This is no joke. So I will be very, very happy when some more lightness to that phrasing come back and it can be a little more fun. Yeah, hey, let's be careful out there.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That was the first, somebody putting a link in the chat box. It threw me. What about you, Tasha?
I just like to tell everybody that we're operating at the edge of chaos. And I think that it's starting to finally resonate, because people are like, when are we going to come out of it? I'm kind of like, well, we're going to be in chaos forever, so let's just figure out how we're going to operate there. And I think it gives people a little bit of relief, honestly.
Yeah, I love that. It is, we always think that as producers that we can control chaos, but chaos is chaos. It's not, I don't think you can control it. I think there are some people that turn it off and then wake back up the next morning and, grab it again, but I don't think you can turn it off. I love that. That's good. It makes me nervous. What about you, Anastasia?
I think one of my things that I've heard from someone else, and I don't remember where, but is, and I kind of live by this with my producers, just because, as we all know who work in production, it's always easy to blame the producer for everything. It's always the producer's fault, and the producer always says no, and the producer is always a roadblock. And of course, you want to be perceived as the person who's not the roadblock. So I always tell my team, like, if you close a door, open a window or many, because if you're perceived as shutting the door, you're never going to win as a producer, right? So just always having like, the caveats of, I'm shutting this door right now, maybe in your face, but look at, there's 3 little windows open over here. So let's go over here and look through these windows. So that's kind of one of the things I've been living by, especially during this time with everybody being remote. There's a lot of miscommunication and a lot of blaming, about like, well, the producer just said this is not doable. And so we feel like they really, stopped the project. And it's like, just sometimes things are not doable. So what is doable? And so that's kind of my motto of the day.
I love that. It's great. It's really amazing. I'm going to throw one last question and then we'll do it really fast and then we'll say goodbye to you guys. Again, you guys are amazing. So John, if you could talk to your 10-year-old self right now, what would you tell him?
Oh boy. Stand by who you are. Don't try to be something you're not. And don't be afraid of risk. Really go out there and keep doing what you want to do and feel you want to do. Obviously without hurting anyone else or it's like kind of the follow your dreams, but in a real way, and I think, do things that make you happy.
God, I love that. I wish you could tell my 10-year-old self that. What about you, Anastasia?
I think if I were to encapsulate it in one sentence, it would probably be like, be brave, and live in the moment. Those are the 2 things I think I've struggled most of my life with. Being brave, I always had, believe it or not, a real deep shyness growing up. And so being brave was really hard for me, and being in the moment has been my biggest struggle in life. I am a future-oriented, past-oriented person, and I never am here. And that's my biggest challenge and my biggest opportunity, I suppose, right? Is to. Oh
my God. Well, you're brave today, you sang, and you're here. And I love that you're here. Tasha, what about you?
I would say take more risk. I take a lot of risks. But I feel like if I could coach myself, I would say take even more risk.
Wow.
So
I love that. And know that it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Sometimes
be
you're going to
okay.
fail. Sometimes you're not going to fail. Sometimes you're going to win, but take risks. I love that. Yeah. That's great. Well, guys, thank you so much. You guys have been inspiring and amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time for LBB and Great Guns to join us today. And I hope I see you around the block. I hope we can have drinks and dinner. I hope I can tap dance in real life for you again, Anastasia.
That would be lovely.
And John, you have to cook a dinner for us from your garden.
I think John should also work on putting together a theater troupe in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And then
Oh,
I would
yes. Oh my
call
God.
them to your place.
Yes.
Oliver can tap dance. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
can tap dance.
Exactly.
We could do chorus line. It's a
The
revival
chorus line, a one-man show, chorus line.
Can you imagine a chorus line, a one-man show? And Tasha, we'll come and paint with you any day of the
Oh,
week.
yay.
We'll clean up all your messes.
I need to see your paintings as well.
What's that, Addison?
See your paintings as well at some point, please.
You'll see them. You'll see them before the
Yes.
series is over. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. See you around the block.
Thank you.
Really,
Lovely
really
to see you all.
Thank you.